How did you get there?
How did I get there?
How'd you get there?
I was drafted there.
And what year?
You went in?
What year? You remember what year?
1918.
1918.
And where did you leave
And I
from?
was just in Camp Lee or Camp Dix. And 6 weeks after I went to camp, I was over in the trenches.
In France.
In France. And we went in there, and it was a big experience because we didn't know anything about this one. And when we went in, we had this, they had taken this man by the name of Katz along, and he shouldn't have been in there. I mean,
Why shouldn't he been in there?
he was, well, what we'll say, he wasn't very, very far developed. And they made a fool out of him and everything else, but I didn't. But when we went in there, in Baccarat, France, there's where we went in, the back trenches then. And of course we were all scared. Didn't know where we were.
And you were, how old were you then?
How old?
How old were you?
Well, 24.
24.
And we went in those at night, of course. That's what you must do. And we didn't know where we were. We called the officers, you know. And the first night we were in there, this Katz, his name was, he was all confused. And he got fast and got out in the barbed wire.
Tangled up?
He got tangled up and he began to yell, help, 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 he said. Captain or Private Katz lost his bunk and can't find it. And we went to hunt him, and here he was out there and all tangled up. Then they brought him back in, and the next night he said, there's a lot of nice apples out there, he said, in no man's land. He said, I'll go along and show you where they are. We'll get some. And next night, we had no more than crawled up in the trees or bang, 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 bang all around. We didn't crawl down, we fell down. And that settled that because we knew they were on the lookout.
You were that close to the Germans then?
Yes, they were on the outskirts of Baccarat at that time. And they were all around the trees there, watching and shooting at us all the time. We went in there a couple of days and we moved out and went into more action.
What was it like in the trenches? Like where did you sleep and what did you eat and how did you survive from one day to the next?
Well, they moved with us, our kitchen. My outfit always went with us. And then, of course, we got in tight places. We had to do without eating lots of time. And we were up in, when we got to the Argonne, that was...
At the Argonne Forest?
The Argonne, that was the bad one there because for 5 days we only had one meal in there. They had everything, all the trees all around the place was machine gun. And shooting them off. And of course, while they'd fall back, they'd follow the trees across the roads in the forest. We had to jump in, carry ammunition there. It took, it rained every day we were up there, 5 days in the Argonne.
Nothing to eat.
And we got one meal in those 5 days. That we got from the Germans, or they might have poisoned us, but we didn't think of that.
Well, you found some of their food.
See, there in the Argonne, they were just like little cities under the forest. Rooms.
Underground.
Underground, all around, just like a little town. They lived there for a couple of years, you know.
Well, sure. I guess they were there for about 3-4 years.
Yeah. And the only meal we got, we went in, one place went underground, and they went out the other, and they had just served their supper or something like. And boy, we didn't wonder whether there was any pork already.
You didn't chase them?
We just cleaned it out. And that's the only meal we got in 5 days.
What happened to all your food? Couldn't it get to you?
We could see them coming over the hills, carrying the stuff. Shoulder to shoulder. Maybe they get these fellows up in the trees would watch them till they get maybe a couple 1,000 feet where we were going to eat. There comes a bomb.
Artillery and stuff.
Took them right out. And that's all we got in 5 days. And there, at St. Mihiel, there's where we lost for most of our men. We got, there I got put in with the Ohio National Guard, and there's where I got hit the hardest. They were ready to fight, and we were just green. We had to go and fight with them. And we just did. They had the experience on us, but they gave us all this time, and there was a mistake in the order there. The officers moved us up into a place where we shouldn't have been. And the Germans turned in, come in on both sides of it. And, the only way we could get out is because there was just one raise that saved our life, and that was about this, within 2 miles. And we had to crawl under that, as low as that, for 2 miles and drag our ammunition with it.
They were shooting at you.
To save your life. And we went in there with 275 men, we came out with 75. It was good. If you just raise, see, you get tired dragging something down like that on your stomach for 2 miles.
Like they were shooting across a little hill, like.
Yeah, going across, and just to raise it, kept them getting low enough where they had their guns set. And every now and then a fellow would get tired and just maybe raise a little bit, we'd just shoot the top right off of it. And those guns, they just go like that. That just cuts the tree right off. You can't miss. You can't miss anything. You must get away from it. And you had to stay under that, and that's what we couldn't do, dragging themselves so far. And that's the way they got knocked off. But that was the hardest one we got hit by. We lost 100 men out of 275 right there. And
you made it though.
Huh?
You made it.
I made it. God must have been with me.
You were a good man.
They used gas against you?
Yeah, were you ever in a
there's-
gas attack?
There's where I had to, what's troubling me today, and that plagued me all these years. Chronic throat condition. I got a little too much gas That's him. He'll see the way they do it. They knew that if you had those gas masks on, and they would first throw vomiting gas, and you know how you had to put those things on. You had to have something in your mouth, and everything shut. And I guess they threw that and made you vomit. Well, what it's like vomiting in there.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe no chance to take it off, because if you take it off, you're going to die. And of course you have to take it off a little bit to get air, because that stuff, what a mess that is. You vomit in there and
Right in the mask, so you could.
right in the mask.
They made you vomit first, and then the poison gas would get you after you
And
vomited.
then after you have to take it off to get a little air, then they throw the poison gas. And I got a little too much. And I've been going to a doctor in Europe every several months on account of that, because, and every time he points out that it just feels to me like a real open sore in there. And he declares it's the inflammation of the lining of the throat. I just had enough of gas that just didn't make the breakthrough.
It's been like that ever since.
And been like that ever since. Now, just a month ago I was in again with this doctor. What is his name?
Could be Tory now. Maybe Dr. Tory.
Tor.
Mm-hmm.
And every time he says that's it, and it just seems to me as though it's just open sore.
Right here, right in your throat.
Huh?
Right in where your voice is.
Yes. And so 2 weeks ago I had a real spell again. I didn't say nothing to Carol, but it was pretty sore.
How'd you know if gas was coming?
Huh?
How could you tell if gas was coming? How'd you know if you were being gassed or not?
Well, they gave the signals.
From the guys in the front.
Outfit had their signals, you know, and they sound a different sound, and that meant that to keep your gas mask on.
How long would you have to have that on then? I mean, that's pretty uncomfortable.
Well, I'll tell you, up there, they are going for 3 days. I bet we didn't have it off 2 minutes. We just had a little bit of time, and then shut and quick and get a little air so you could breathe. If that ain't something, I'll tell you.
Did you have to?
And looking through those things, and they're firing at you, and you're trying to do your duty, and you're sick.
Did you sleep? Could you sleep with it on, or didn't you sleep?
Didn't sleep.
Didn't sleep.
We didn't sleep for days at a time. I didn't sleep. My goodness, right there in the Argonne and part of St. Hill, it just rained all the time, and we slept in water puddles and everything. We just lay down and try to go to sleep, but you couldn't sleep.
It was just constant fighting and bombing and artillery and
artillery. And the saddest thing that kept me awake most of the time, I'll tell you, that sound of those who were injured and were out in the battlefield, and the Germans kept it covered. We couldn't go out and get them. And they were hollering, now if you were out in the dark in the country, but you don't know where you are, and somebody's calling for help, and you can't go and get them because the Germans are covering everything. If that don't make you sick.
probably a sad sound.
What a pitiful sound at night. Help, help. And we couldn't do it. But that's what kept me awake.
Did they use airplanes against you? Balloons?
Huh?
Airplanes, balloons.
Did they use any airplanes? Did the Germans use airplanes or balloons or anything like
They
that?
used airplanes, and we actually, they didn't have too many then, but we actually brought one down with our rifle.
Is that right? Shot one down.
Shot one down.
What did they do? Did the airplanes? What did they do? Were they just to see where you were? Or they didn't drop bombs or anything? Did they?
Yeah, they were dropping bombs.
Did the airplanes drop bombs?
They were dropping bombs on us, and then we shot them down.
And you shot one down.
Shot them down.
How about no balloons or blimps?
We never had that. There wasn't so much of stuff at that time.
Nothing like that.
It was mostly just bombs like that and ground fighting then.
Yeah, well, heavy ground fighting.
Heavy ground, I'll tell you that.
Did you ever come face to face to someone, a German that you had to?
Now listen, that makes me sick.
It's all right. You know it.
You know, that's one thing I always prayed for, that I wouldn't have to stick it in. You know, and you know, it came so mighty close. But again, I say God was with me. I was in with almost as close as you, I could see, right ready. And they had the call to charge, and they ran.
You were face to face with him.
They turned, I was face to face with them, ready to use Ben.
You had your bayonet
Which
sticks,
I had prayed I never had to,
and he took off.
and I didn't know.
You didn't have to. Well,
Just, they were ready to do it, but God changed their mind, and they were on.
mm-hmm.
But it was set, and I thought that was it.
Did
I always had prayed I wouldn't have to stick it there.
when you would shoot, were you shooting at people? How far away were, if you were during this? Could you see people that you were actually shooting at, or would you shoot at a group of people, or was it just not so much shooting by yourself?
Mostly shooting from one trench to the other.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they come out in mass, and of course that was different, but mostly they dig holes and get in, and then just take pops at you. But then there's times, so many times, I dug hundreds of holes in France and Belgium
Some of them are probably still there.
to stop, to save my life. Well, that was the thing. We advanced, when you advance, and they'd get too hot, they'd start to shooting too many of your men. And you got the order to halt and dig a hole and get in. And I tell you, when your life depends on it, you dig a hole quick.
Pretty quick hole.
And so many times, you see, you dig the hole and throw it up in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
That would protect you pretty quick. But so many times in France, you'd hit a rocky place. And boy, you just couldn't get down. Then, of course, you'd get. But maybe you'd go, maybe only dig a hole and work like crazy to save your life. In an hour, advance.
Go. Leave your hole.
Maybe you'd get another. That's me. Keep pushing them back.
Mm-hmm.
Dig another hole and stay in till they give way. And if they don't give way, then you pass them with your bayonet. And that was the time that I was so close, almost as close as you and I.
So
And
what?
That isn't it. So,
Why was it that the Allied forces were able to push them back? What were there just more men? Do you think? I mean,
what's that?
What made it that you were able to finally push them back? I mean, they were there for 4 years, and then
4 years.
how did you root them out of all those?
Well, because they brought so many reinforcements in to overpower them. That's all they did.
Were the Germans using younger soldiers by that time? You were 24. That was pretty old.
Oh boy, they had just boys, a lot of boys, young fellas. They took any gauge. Boy, they just threw them
by
in.
that time.
Threw them in by shock. Shocks. They didn't care for lives,
Just someone in a uniform.
Yes, that.
You were never shot.
I was knocked out one time. Yeah, I spent a week in the hospital. I couldn't walk. A shell hit about 5 feet away. exploded and just rendered me helpless.
Could you, when a shell like that came, could you hear it?
Huh?
Could you hear it come, like before an artillery shell exploded? You
Didn't hear him come.
You could hear him come?
Didn't hear him come. Yes, you could hear him come, and it just whistled. And that hit so close, and it killed 5 of my companions right there, but saved me.
Were you, when you got to France, were you in an outfit, or you said you were with the Ohio National Guard for a while? Who were you with when you?
That's where I did my hardest fighting with the National Guard.
And
I was with Company D, 146 Infantry. When I went in, that's what I was drafted into, but then they needed replacements for that Ohio National Guard. They had lost so many men, and they picked us and put us under that.
So you were in the front lines.
That was the trouble. I was so unlucky that I got in what they call the shock troops, and you know what that means.
First ones.
They're the ones they pick. If it's a stronghold, they send you there, you break it. Then they take you out and put some weaker outfit in. And I was on every sector in the Western Front. Just from one hard place you break through, take you right back and take you up to the next. And that's how I got in so much fighting, shock troops.
You never heard from home while you were there? You didn't write letters? Couldn't get letters back home?
Yeah, well, not while we were up on drives like that, but when we come back and give us a rest once in a while, then we'd have a lot of mail.
So if you went there in if you were drafted in 1917 and the war was over in 1918, so you were there right to the end of the war?
Yes, I was there when the armistice was signed.
How did you?
In Leaders 1 Belgium.
How did you hear about that?
Well, they ordered it out from headquarters, but yet nobody believed it. And the next day, several of our men were killed.
After the armistice? After
it was signed. Even if you'd walk out in the country, out on top of the trenches, you'd pick them off for a day or more. And several of our men lost their lives like that.
And after it was over and everyone knew it was over, then what did you do then? Did you still have to keep going and
hiking back towards the place where we'd be mustered out? Travel 25 miles a day, carrying heavy pack.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you. When you said about you had to crawl and drag. What were the things you had to carry with you all the time when you were there?
We threw everything away but what you had to have. It rained so much we even threw our raincoats away. Couldn't handle it. And you're sure to keep your rifle.
Yeah.
And you had to keep all the ammunition that you had. And that's about all you could take along, but you want to be sure you have your gun and protect your ammunition and go for the worst.
Shovel? Did you have to
hunt for shelter?
And did you always carry a gas mask with you, or did you?
Oh yes. Yes, well, and the gas mask, you'd be sure to keep that on because you didn't know where you'd meet that. Where you didn't meet that.
So after it was over, you didn't like collect weapons or empty out their strongholds or anything? You just kind of grouped them all together, all the Germans.
I didn't understand that.
Well, when the fighting was over, what did they do with all the guns and all the ammunition that you got from the Germans?
You're coming back, traveling back towards France on foot after the war, traveling towards our place to stay till we'd be mustered out. Might be so stacks and stacks, machine guns.
Piled up.
Piled up in these forests where they had been using in all these trees. That was the trouble in the Argonne. They had a machine gun about every 20 feet up in the tree.
In trees?
Up in
With one man up there, or two men?
Yes. And you know what that was to advance against something like that.
One machine gun could take care of a lot of guys.
Oh my goodness. I'll tell you, and then beside that they had dug these trenches in a way that our tanks couldn't cross many places. See, they had built them so the head would go down and stick.
Stick down.
And that's where we go. And that's what was wrong there. They couldn't support us. Couldn't get anything in.
The Germans were there for too many years.
There was trenches that when a tank would go, it would go just so it would fit in.
Straight down.
See what I mean?
Yeah, be like stuck down on the ground and couldn't come up out the other
Couldn't
side.
come up on the other side. And we were at their mercy. They were up there in those trees just shooting us down.
So the tanks didn't really help you a whole lot in the front.
And that was the trouble when they were trying to get food up to us, up there in Oregon and in St. Mihiel. My gosh, they'd hook 8 big horses to one big piece of ammunition to bring it up to blast them out of there, and they couldn't pull it through.
Is that right?
Mud this deep, rained weeks at a time. That's what we were up against. They couldn't protect us. They had 8 horses hooked on one cannon, and they just hang up.
Couldn't move it.
They tried their best to get them up.
And now that you said it was in the forest, but there was no forest then there. I mean, were the trees pretty much
Oh my
going?
goodness. Yeah, that was something. We could see them coming with food way off. Maybe they'd have a team of horses hooked onto the kitchen bringing stuff. And then they'd come so close, then they'd get off to carry it, and when they get about 1,000 feet where we could eat, here comes
There it
bomb.
comes.
That was the last time.
For 5 days.
Boy, that was rough.
What?
That was rough.
What's it like not to eat a meal for one meal in 5 days?
Oh, just imagine. But I guess we're so excited that, I don't know, it's something in you that impulse, I don't know. It's something kept us going.
When you were fighting there, what were your feelings about what you were doing? Were you proud that you were able to help our country fight against the Germans? Were most people feeling that way? Were you anxious to try to get them out of there?
Yes, we were taught to that. And that was the thing to do, to destroy their power. And that's what we were supposed to do.
It wasn't easy.
It wasn't easy. Boy, I can see it. There's 8 big draft horses hitched on one big gun coming up through and riding into the mud up to their knees, up to their belly. And then when it would get them pretty close, then a cannon would come over and away she go.
You used a lot of horses, I guess, in the war.
Oh yes, horses. My God, in our travels coming back after the war was over, you'd be surprised how many big draft horses we'd see piled up along the way.
Is that right?
They tried to bring stuff.
Trying to get them to you.
Yeah, they tried to get it up, but they couldn't do it.
So then after the war was over, then were you done? How long were you in the Army then after it was over?
Well, I was discharged in April.
1919. So you were in about 2 years then?
I was in 1 year.
From 1918?
Well, I was drafted, but I mean I was over.
You were over there 1 year?
Over there, yeah.
1 year. And that was, well, that's all that the United States was really there, I guess,
Huh?
That's all the United States was really fighting about, a year. You were there almost the whole time that the United States was fighting.
Yes, you see, 16 or 3 weeks. When I was in camp, I was over in the trenches.
Excuse me, I need to put back do. If I don't, I'll lose them.
So you said you were drafted, and so about 6 weeks you were,
6 weeks were over in France.
within 6 weeks you were in France.
Yeah.
Went by big troop carrier, boat.
Yes, sir. And that first, about that Abraham Katz, they should never kept him in the army. And he was scared to death. I guess we were too, but they made a fool out of him. They did it. Get him drunk and get him, and that was against the rule, you know. And then they get him out at night and put bayonets on and run him out around the barracks and tell him they're going to kill him because he's drinking in the army.
Did Abraham Katz make it?
Yeah. Why, as I was going to say then, before we went into the real stuff, they detailed me to take him back to headquarters. And you know, every step you take, and I didn't know the country too well. Boy, you know what that is in a country like that. And they detailed me to take him to headquarters. And they said it's not too long a time till dark. Now you hurry and get him there, and you get back to her, and you'll get lost. And my golly, we started out, and he got stubborn, and he said, "Damn it to hell," he said, I'm not going to go. I'm going to go back." I said, "You can't go back." I said, "And I can't let you go back." He said, well, he said, "I won't walk in front of you." I said, "Well, you go ahead, I'll walk and you'll get lost." And he had a rifle, and he could have shot me. But I said, "No, I'll have to walk in front, I'll have you to deliver you, and I have to get back." And by God, as I started out, and he hung back for a while, and after a while he came forward. And then we came into a place, and here I heard, it was dark at night, and imagine that coming in the country like you didn't know where in the world you were. Here, an officer came up in front of me. See, I was leading him in, and he was back of me. He should have been in front of me, but he wouldn't walk in front of me. And this officer said, or I said to this officer, and my instructions were, if they don't know the password, don't let them pass at any cost, if you have to shoot. And this officer, I realized it was a kind of army right in front of us, a lot of men. And this officer steps out there in the forest. Here I was with this fellow to deliver. I said, "What is the password?" He said, "I don't know." Imagine that. I was supposed to shoot him down.
So what'd you do?
But I didn't do it. I took the chance. I could have been court-martialed. But it worked out all right. I told him, I said, you'll have to let me pass. And I'll have to have the password. He said, "You give me 15 minutes and I'll have the password." And by gosh, he went and got it.
What was the password?
I forget what that was.
What did
Just a simple word.
Just a little word.
Just a simple word. Now there he risked his life. Simply because he didn't get the information he should have. I should have shot him right down. Because if I'd let them pass without the password, they'd have shot me.
Yeah, right. Could have shot you. I mean.
So I delivered him. But even, and then he came back to the company again.
Abraham Katz.
Yes, sent back to the country again. And then we started over the country in St. Nahil, when they were shelling us so bad. Well, he jumped up out of the hole where he was in, and they were shooting all over us, shooting these big bums. hear the things whistling all over you. And he jumped up and looked, and he was right across from me, and took a look up there once. He jumped out of that hole and he ran. Yeah, I could see him, yeah, run. My gosh, I never saw a man run like that. And by gosh, about a month later, we got word that Private Abraham Katz was taken in by some general along the way in a dugout, and he's okay.
It's all right.
And by golly, a month after the war was over, I read in the paper that he got back to Philadelphia.
Is that right? He's from
Yes,
Philadelphia.
He did.
That's good.
He got back to Philadelphia.
And you made it back to York.
Yes, he did.
That's good.
But he should have never been in there. He couldn't learn. My gosh, he'd come out to train, or if it was raining, maybe he'd only have one sleeve in his raincoat. He couldn't even dress right. And take him in the army.
When you were in the trenches, yeah, you didn't have trouble with your feet or your shoes from mud and wet?
That was a big trouble. And the biggest trouble was they couldn't furnish you with the shoes that would really fit you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I had the last part of it. The shoes that I had imagined were 13E. And I wear a 10E. And walk over those cobblestones with those big heavy, sloppy shoes on. 25 miles a day, carrying 25 miles. If that wasn't something.
When it rained, didn't the trenches fill up with water?
The trenches?
Yeah.
Lots of times we laid in water all night. Before they get up on the top, they'd shoot you off. Yes, I slept in water many a night. Maybe 6, 8 inches of water in trenches. Some of them would fill up and crawl up as far as you dare. I tell you, do anything to save your life.
Save your life.
But that was funny, but Katz got through all that and got back home. But I wrote his letters and everything. He couldn't write.
Couldn't write?
Yes, I did everything for it. He should have never been in there. And I guess that's the reason he didn't shoot me when I made him walk so fast. When I was taking him there and went ahead of him, I said, now you'll have to follow me or you'll be lost. Every step he took, he said, you son of a bitch, I'll shoot you if you don't stop. I said, I can't stop, I have to take you. And that's where I had to risk my life. But
Just to get him back.
To get him back there and deliver, had to do what was asked to do. And then I had to get my way back home.
You found your way back, all right.
In a country like that you don't know a thing about, where you're walking into the enemy, where you, boy, that was something.
Quite an
But I was
experience.
lucky all the way through. I guess God was with me.
Well, you made it this far. That's good.
Yeah.
How old are you now?
92 and a half.
92 and a half. You'll be 93 on December
13th.
December 13th.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's lots of incidents along the road. That's very interesting. You know, now with that Katz, as I say, they make a fool out of him. The rule was, you know, you don't use liquor or anything, and some of these fellows would, and they take him out and get him drunk, just to get him in trouble. And my goodness, at one time they got him out, and they had posted some fellow from the country that he didn't know, and they told him now, he said, you were out last night and you were caught drunk. And they had taken him out and got him drunk. They did that just to get him pushed up and make a fool out of him. And they posted this fellow, and they got I think it was 3 men with rifles, and this was a big barracks, all great, maybe several hundred feet long, you know, these barracks. Mm-hmm. And they got their rifles out, and they brought the fellow went in and brought him out of bed. He was in his caught already. They picked him up and said, "Now," I said, "you're being tried for court-martial tonight. You were drunk last night." Oh my goodness, he just sank. He just actually fainted. And they picked him up and took him out, and I said, "There, those men with bayonets." Now I said, "If you can outrun all three of them, you won't be punished. But if you can't keep running till they're all three paid out, well then you're liable to get a bail for what you did."
As a joke, did it as a joke.
And my golly, well, he was just shaking like a leaf. And the sergeant said, "Now you go," and they took their turn, you know. And they run him till he fell over. Then they carried him in and laid him on his cot and left him go to sleep. And the next night they take him out, and the dumb fella, they'd let him get drunk again. And then they take him out, and they put a rope on a tree out there, right outside the barracks. And they said, "Now here's one of the head men, and he's going to ask you some questions. If you were drunk last night again." And he said, "If you were," he said, there's that rope right above it. He said, "Your body will be hanging from that very short." And oh my God, he just sank. And they picked him, when he fainted, fell out, just picked him up and laid him in his bunk, left him go to sleep. Now that's the way they
Picked on him. Always picked on him.
Now he should have never been in there. But boy, he just literally fainted. They just run him till he fell.
Right down.
Tell him, he said, "Now this is a fellow, and you'll be court-martialed, and in a short time, your body will be hanging from that limb there." He said, "Do you see that?" Yeah. And then he went down. I pitied the poor fellow. I always took up for him, you know.
That's why they picked you to take him back. They knew you'd get. They knew you would take him back. They weren't too sure about those other guys. That's for sure.
I wouldn't be surprised at any other man he'd have shot if they would.
Well, that's
But
probably.
he knew that I wrote his letters and everything.
Well, that's good. Okay. Well, I tell you what. I think we're getting ready to eat. So you remembered a lot.
Yeah.
We'll save this for the Ehrhart families to view for a long time.
Yeah, they'll be going to eat something we didn't do when we opened the
Hey,
elbow.
do you have since you were in this war? What are your feelings about war?
Huh?
What do you feel about war? Since you were in the first modern war, and World War II came, and Korea and Vietnam, you think we learned anything?
I don't think we did. I don't think we learned anything. Then they have to learn is greed. And that's still going on. They want more.
Same old story.
Same old story. The German, Russian.
Mm-hmm.
More. Nobody learned that. And the greatest thing is the greed of all these countries. They want more and more and more. And that is the nature of man.
Well, you may be right there.
That's the
doesn't
nature.
seem to
That's the nature of man.
just change weapons. Not
And as long
man doesn't change much.
And as long as the world stands, there'll be that greed. And I'll tell you, I don't hope we engage in another one. It would be far different from that one.
Wouldn't it, though?
See, that in World War I, it's nearly all, you have to be footing and go face to face. And boy, as I tell you, the greatest thing that God granted me in the war was I didn't have to stick a man.
Stick 'em in.
But it was so good. And that's what the number all your life.
Well, I'm sure.
The way you shoot, you don't know really you killed him.
Really shot someone.
You don't know for sure.
Yeah.
But if I stick a bandage, I'll know that all my life.
You never had to do
That's
it.
what I prayed I wouldn't have.
Well,
And I was spared that. But it came so close. So close. And how many thousands had to face it?
that's for sure.